Presentation of adapted reuse scenarios developed by students of the University of Rwanda, the University of Cape Town, and Uganda Martyrs University. And our moderator is going to be Thomas Berlanda. So show some love to the students in their first presentation.
Some love to me also.
Okay, so I'm just really going to set the order, and then we'll talk about the Q&A session later. First off is Manlio Micheletto, who is the Dean of the School of Architecture at the University of Rwanda. And off to you, Manlio.
Yes. So, welcome back after the break. Morning, everyone. So, it's really it's not for me, this size. So, as Berlanda Thomas said, I'm Manlio Micheletto, I'm an architect, I'm the Dean of the School of Architecture, and I want to just introduce briefly the workshop hosted in our school, brand new School of Architecture and Built Environment, here at the Nyarugenge campus. Sorry? And art gallery, yes. But yesterday I didn't sleep, because really too many emotions after the event of yesterday, and to see simple classrooms transform in places that are able to produce art. Nice, really. So let me thank first all people that spend energy, time organizing the workshop in our school. So, I mean, Dorcy, Rai, Kathleen is there on the back. Thank you, Kathleen. And Berend. Murakose Chan and Berend. So, and then I want to thank all the students, because without students, there is no workshop, there is no school, there is no my position as dean. So, thank you very much. Stay here. So, I will continue to work for the University of Rwanda. Let me say something about the title of this workshop, Adaptable Reuse. Because thinking about this short introduction, I wanted to quote The Architecture of the City by Aldo Rossi. When he said and stated that the city built itself over the time. Which time? So, you see, already in the title is expressed the time, the reuse. So, using again something that already exists, that is part of the city. Of course, we have to agree that for us, the city is an architecture made by architectures. And this workshop, I think, is in line with this statement that the city is made by layers, historical layers. And we have to rethink about the past in order to build the future. And I was just sitting in my rows, in my chair, and the lady in front of me is wearing a polo, the blue one. Yes, you. And you know what is written in your polo? What is written? To explore. Unbelievable. You see, it's not just, sorry, Anna, to provide a master plan for the future, recalling the past. No, we have to remind and to study, analyze the past for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Manlio. And now I will leave the floor to Mike Lowe and Stella Papanikolaou, who are both senior lecturers in architecture at the University of Cape Town, who will introduce how the workshop with the students was framed, and then organize the presentation by the different groups. Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas. So like Thomas mentioned, Stella and I will just give a brief introduction to the workshop. So first of all, Manju, thanks also for your introduction. And Manju's already thanked a lot of people, but we'd like to maybe repeat some of it and thank a few more. So first of all, thanks for Dorsey and the Rwanda Arts Initiative for initiating the project. Baron van der Lans from African Architecture Matters. Kathleen, obviously, from Beaux-Arts. We'd also like to thank Manlio and the school for hosting all of us. And we'd also like to thank and acknowledge the students. Without their energy and enthusiasm, this wouldn't have been possible. So just to mention the tutors, so Baron van der Lans and Laura Nsengiyumva, who presented earlier, were part of the tutoring team, as was Mark Olweni from Uganda Martyrs University. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here today. He had to leave on Thursday. And then Stella and myself from the University of Cape Town. So we had students from Uganda Martyrs University, 9 students in the Masters 1 and 2 years. We had our students from the University of Cape Town in the studio that Stella and I convene, which is called Studio Adapt. So there were 8 honor students who joined us. And then from the University of Rwanda, we had a number of 2nd and 3rd year students. So they were divided into 4 groups of at least 6 students per group and at least 2 from each university. So also just from the University of Cape Town, we'd just also like to thank and acknowledge our sponsors who helped our students to get here, which were Paragon Architects and the Paragon Group, Trident Steel, Pam Golding Properties, John Levinson, Mike Skur, and also all the crowdfunding donors on BackerBuddy and those students who funded or partly funded themselves. So just to talk about the project, so beforehand, we knew we were going to work on the prison, and when we arrived, we changed the project to cover 2 projects. So there were a number of possibilities, but with the limited time, we decided to focus on 2 that could be representative of adaptive potential with any number of sites in Kigali itself. So on this Sunday, beginning of this week, we went on site visits. So we tried to look at the buildings as much as we could, and we had some information that we had available to us. So on the Kigali Central Prison, unfortunately, we were not able to access it, which was a pity, but we did have a plan which Beirut found in the Belgian Colonial Archives. And obviously one can see the prison from the hotel that we're staying in and from the surrounding streets. And then the Belgian school, we were able to get access, but for that we unfortunately did not have any drawings. So there was a certain amount of information available, and the rest our students had to infer and assemble just by observation. So the workshop started with the Rwanda Arts Initiative, with Dorsey and a number of artists who came to present to our students and showed us their work and told us what kind of spaces they would need and which spaces would be ideal that should be incorporated into the proposals. And then from there, the students also explored the local art scene in various ways. So we went to the Inema Arts Center, where some of them did some artwork together with local kids. And then on the top left, a few of them also engaged in karaoke in Kigali Central. They also immersed themselves in the life of Kigali and tried to experience as much of it as possible, just to get to know the place a bit better. And then work started in earnest on Monday morning. So the students essentially had 4 days to work on the project. We started first thing on Monday, and they had to submit by end of play on Thursday.
So the students from Uganda and from South Africa were challenged by the fact that they were away from home, and they had to improvise, and with a lot of help from the local students, they were able to get some laptops together, and they also used a roll of paper that Berend brought along, so a lot of hand drawing, and also some inventive use of apps that were available on their smartphones, which was really interesting to watch them adapt in the new environment. Yeah. So what they did, what we had was 2 moments of, so the the workshop timing was divided into 2 moments. One was aiming towards a target. That we had 2 reviews. The first review was practitioners from Rwanda were invited to. Okay, I think you do that. Practitioners from Rwanda were invited to comment on the students. They had worked up some rough drawings and put ideas together, and these were discussed with the practitioners. The students then went back into the studio and continued to work on ways of communicating their ideas, and these were presented to international experts who have been part of this forum. So that would be Leslie and Thomas and Joe, who gave a very lively and insightful commentary, and the students then went away and did some further work to produce the posters that you see at the school and these PowerPoints that you will see in a moment. So what I'd just like to do very briefly is to say that this was a very short project. The students worked with very limited material in very limited time, and with people they didn't know very well that they had to still get to know, so there was a lot of dynamic and working in a group of 6. Big learning curve for them, really exciting. But because it was really short with limited materials, it really is just a provocation. So we want to really emphasize the fact that the students have put together some images that are not at all indicative of what should be built, but are really there for conversation and provocation of discussion. And in light of that, I'd like you just to notice when the students present their work that what this emerged was a number of different ways that one can approach working with existing buildings. And what you will see is there are 3 proposals that emerge for the prison and 3 for the school. And essentially we have for the prison, we have a ranging approach from one that doesn't really do anything to the prison but uses it as a location from which to view the hill across the other side. Another one that occupies the prison, also with not touching its materiality, and another one that is more conceptual and erodes some of the materiality of the heritage building in order to make commentary. So it provokes different conversations around what you can do to heritage. And in the school sites, on the whole, the students responded to the school and the fact that it was fenced in. So the idea was really to open it up to the direct neighbors, and also to densify. So the challenge is, how does one do that? And really just the beginning of a conversation. So. Right. So just to make a point in terms of the questions that come afterwards and the discussions, it would be really useful for our students and for the students from Uganda. We are taking this project further. We're going to go home and pick it up and develop these projects for our June exam. So this is now our work moving forward. So this is really a provocation for the students as well to start thinking about what could they do, and comments from here will be really a good guide for them in terms of making decisions going forward. So thank you very much to everybody for being here and contributing to our students' experience.
We're the first group going up, and our group is comprised of 3 students from Uganda Martyrs University. We're 10, not 9, and 2 from the University of Rwanda and another 2 from University of Cape Town. That's us there. So we're going to present an adaptive reuse concept for the Belgian school in Kigali. The Belgian school in Kigali is found in the Nyarugenge district of Kigali, and specifically in that area right there, that's the central business district where the school is found. And zooming into that area, there is a number of other spots that are designated as heritage and for conservation in the most recent copy we could find of the Kigali master plan. So we'll list them real quickly and then move on to the school. And the prison is up there, 1930. And That's where the school is. As far as we could tell, the school was completed in the mid-1960s, after Kigali had already acquired her independence, Rwanda. And so we imagine that the school was initially built for the remnant of the Belgian community in Kigali, and afterwards incorporated the more affluent local community. That's where we are right now, for reference. Zooming in further into where the school is, you find in the properties around the school, the light blue spots are high-rise, commercial and residential mostly. And to what should be your right, on this side, there is more planned, organized, and corporate in architecture and sort of businesses. And on the left, there is less formal stuff going on.
So on our site visit, we took note of how closed off the site was, the school in general, and it was really closed off from the surrounding community, especially the locals, and there was boundary walls from either side of the streets. We felt that this created a sense of exclusivity from the people within and those outside. So in our intervention, the aim is to break these boundaries, both structurally and spatially, to create a space that could be used by artists, professionals, non-professionals, and the local community. Basically a space that allows all to coexist and without designated spaces. This way the space would be transformed from one that is exclusive to one that is inclusive.
From our analysis, there are several elements that we valued about the site. Those include the location of the site. It has access from 3 roads those 3 roads has varying traffic measures. Like we have the bus route, going around our site. Next, the site is the Belgian school is bridging several zones in the Kigali city. Like we're having on the upper hill, we're having a more organized commercial district, and then we are having, like in the lower land, we are having the informal settlements. In the site, you can see the organization of the buildings. There are several courtyards which were used for sports, like for the kids, and they used also for gathering. And this was an element we valued much because it was green, open, and it gave a sense of community and belonging to the users of the site. Next, we valued the landscape. You can see there is a variety, like the blocks are arranged on different levels in the site, and it was easier to organize the different programs. And the classrooms that were there, they are in pretty good condition. They can be reused without doing so much changes.
Some of the challenges that the site presented were, or as already explained, it was inward looking, yet it was in the city center, and then it was just a community of its own. So it depended on itself, but did not depend on the city. So hence our concept of making it a community part of the city walkthrough. Then the other challenge, as you can see, is this was structured for a school. So the rigidity of the classrooms makes that visual access and interaction across very hard. And then lastly is that the site did not offer that infrastructure that would make it economically viable. It's a school, yes, but it would not make as much money as a mall would or a multi-purpose structure would have made. And those are some of the things that we're trying to work with.
So the first obvious move that we made was to remove the boundary walls that separated the city from the school, which allows for people to access it from different street facades. Then the second thing that you can see in this running image is to demolish the existing roof structures, which were made from asbestos. The third thing was to introduce disruptive interventions that connected the existing class structures together, which allows for people to walk through those between the classroom blocks. And the last step would be insertion of programmatic extensions, which would be building vertically upwards, especially I can't point to it, but on your left, mixed-use buildings that incorporate ground floor arcades for commercial functions, and artists' apartments and offices in the mid-rise sections of those spaces. And these diagrams just indicate visual access through different parts of the site. The central diagram, the diagram to the right shows that our intervention aims to be a buffer zone between high-rise residential hotels that are adjacent to the site and the informal settlements on the other side.
Right. This is just quite a provocative collage, if you like, of how we imagine the life within. Oh. There we go. That's better. This is just a provocative collage of how we imagine the life within one of the courtyards to be after our intervention. And it really is seen as an active work area or playground for creative activities where public and artists can intermingle, and it works on the value of that, the positive courtyard space that already exists in between the classroom buildings. And in the background you can see an impression of the extended buildings on the street front that would accommodate commercial and office space, and a public walkthrough that would allow the persons to filter through into the site below.
Thank you. And as you can see to the courtyard, and as we say that the site will be open, through this courtyard people could be just pass through like it's a public road, and so the artist will be exposed to the public. And on the commercial side, the building is somehow raised, which allowed the passage through a fluid passage through the site as a normal public space. Okay, to this side you can see the big courtyard that we found there. It was concrete, and we thought it could be used as a multi-purpose courtyard where events can be held and some temporary markets, and it could connect people more with artists and also gather the community at the same time.
And yeah, I suppose we could envisage markets taking place under the covered areas, which could stretch out into the open space when weather permits. And something else that could be useful is to convert the existing canteen and kitchen of the school to serve artists and public alike on event days. And that's it. And now we'll just be showing you a short video which summarizes and highlights the presentation.
Good afternoon. Our approach is socio-economical and applies urban design using small-scale interventions to transform the larger context. Kigali is famous for its many hills, which allows constant visual moments and connection to the city. We believe and value culture as an art, which seeks to improve life through thoughtful change. This slide shows the Kigali Master Plan. The city is a cultural precinct. It has city attractions, heritage buildings, special urban areas, and landmarks. It also values non-motorized transport, focusing on people. We wish to connect people to these cultural landmarks by activating routes along the street and making small changes to the existing buildings. This in turn raises the economy of the people on the paths, as well as highlighting the beauty of the everyday.
The map on this slide shows cultural precincts, pedestrian paths, bus ways, and the red spots indicate routes that could contribute to the activation of Kigali city. And these routes are connecting the different cultural precincts. And in the diagram on the corner, or on the top corner of the slide, shows a diagram indicating or illustrating this experience, which is both physical and visual, as people move from one cultural precinct to another, and from one cultural precinct can actually view another heritage site. Here we show a journey through the everyday, a journey a sample of the journey that people can take, and this joins the Belgian School of Kigali to the old Nyarugenge prison. And the video that follows shows a journey of the everyday through one of the sample paths that we chose.
Ndi bumuntu tarara 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 Bobo from the beat Nubwo ngusa nkacumura nkatinzira yawe mana nuntererana iyo nsizwe njyenyine iyo nsinzwe nkacika intege mana ni wowe ntabaza erega wankuye aho nari kwikura nari narayobye maze unyereka inzira and now I say thank you Lord I say thank you Lord I appreciate Lord since the day we met I've never been the same I appreciate Manu gongo fite Nukuri ndanyuzwe Tarara 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 I don't know
Oh, sorry. So this following slide is just some captions from the video. We seek to use the video as part of the journey experience and to try and understand the fundamental aspects of the journal walk and what potentials lie within these journeys. So this first slide indicates, a basic analysis of, hard edges. We also have like greenery views along these journeys. You have quite narrow pavements, and in some instances quite wide pavements as well. And these all can start to form part of potentials and how interventions can start to play. The second slide shows more of a retail of both formal and informal retail street edge, and a boundary which is which is used in this instance for seating, wide pavement. We can see the topography, which can also start to be integrated to actually allow the public for seating and to enjoy retail spaces. This illustration, this third illustration, is the one towards the Kigali prison. And it shows a very great, on the background, you have very great views, you have integrated streets, you have greenery, and all of these elements and aspects start to form the basic building grounds and for potentials for interventions. This slide further illustrates the journey through the example journey which we've chosen from the Kigali prison, from the school, the Belgium school to the Kigali prison, and where we can start to actually integrate these interventions. The first intervention along the path basically shows us recognizing green spaces as quite vital spaces which you can start to integrate along these pathways to allow them to be more viable and more walkable. The second intervention can also seek along the path to have like rest spaces for the community, which these are some of the lacking stuff within the city walk, which we can start to play with and integrate within the city fabric. The third one is quite it's a reference from an example in Italy, where we can start to look at the history of Rwanda as a whole, and start to use the pavement along the streets, paving, put monuments along the paving to celebrate the history and also to give allowance for the future. The third one is also picking up from one of the street nodes, which is the retail node, and if we can enhance these these spaces, they can start to allow for a more creative and interactive street edge, which will seemingly work with commercializing the street edges. This following one as well looks at using the slopes of the city, to actually start to form these terrace platforms, which will start to work with convergence and allow interaction between the general public for performances, for seating and resting spaces. The other one as well looks to introducing more urban furniture along these paths, which will further enhance the usability and these walkable pathways. The last one seemingly looks at more formal shaded spaces along these pathways, and this one is basically towards as you approach. This is a site as you approach the prison, and from here you also have great views looking over the prison site, looking into the Genocide Memorial Center, and this also starts to integrate the tangible and the intangible works of this intervention.
So we looked at how this journey can be a continuation both in the school and the prison, and some of the interventions that we suggested really were just small changes of what is already existing. So this just shows a space that we identified that we could still maintain its value, the warehouse that we found at the Belgian school. And what we're proposing is to open up this structure to a nice public space that is already existing. And this is also seen in the other interventions that we found. We also found that at the school, there are these corridors that open out to the courtyard along the classrooms. And what this could essentially become is also a space where artists can use as an expression of their art or a platform. And these spaces can open out to the courtyard. And this becomes also a collaborative space for the artists to pass on knowledge to children or the public or community. And then we also identified a number of open spaces at the school, and this is one that is mainly at the entrance that we have suggested to become a public event space or performance space for the artists.
Thank you. Going to the prison founded in 1930. Also, we think about the architecture of this prison. We wanted to keep the existence, how its architecture looks like, and also we make the little intervention on it by introducing the changing the entrance by introducing the entrance of traditional Rwandan hut. Going to the prison, they also, as you see on that upper picture, we wanted also to introduce the viewing deck up on those those walls, also for those detentions, special detentions inside the prison. Want also to make them the way they can exhibit their works, those artists.
Okay, so okay, thank you. So here comes, we identify some structures which are still firm, and then the intervention that we wanted like one of the structures is the kitchen, the existing kitchen. So we wanted to use it as a performance stage mainly for musicians, and the other one is the wall that you find in entering, that we wanted it to come to be an exhibition wall, as it's already having the function. So, thank you.
Sorry. Testing. These interventions are in the first phase and are the start of a layering process that could connect people to the cultural city by foot and by sight. This is urban acupuncture, minimum input for maximum output.
Good afternoon. Let me first start with a quick brief history about the prison, which is a site. Firstly, this prison started to be used in 1930, and it was first built to accommodate few thousands of people. But after the genocide, the number increased up to 50,000 people, and then it was built to accommodate different criminals of different background, male, female, with their children, criminals with high crimes and petty crimes, and then locals and foreigners. And then it was relocated last year in 2018 at Mageragere.
Oh, okay, to begin with, the prison is located in Nyarugenge district, one of the 3 districts of Kigali city, and it is close to the city center, or surrounded by the major city ring road. It is located in the valley. It is located in the valley of the surrounding hills, and also the building is surrounded by the green space. According to the Kigali Master Plan 2050, and also looking on the current situation, the building is located in the commercial zone, whereby the activities going on, and also it allows many opportunities, and its accessibility is facilitated by the transport routes which are present in the area. But due to the Rwandan background or the history of the country, and also how the building appears and its history, it's a negative symbol to the public and also to the people who are subjected to its confinement.
Why is it skipping? Okay, there you go. So our proposal aims to catalyze the building from the ominous fortress of confinement to a local hub for creative expression and collaboration. It also aims to provide social and economic opportunity through the architectural intervention. This is achieved by the following moves. As a group from many different backgrounds, we decided to preserve. Our position was to value the existing fortress and its courtyard as a place to house a lot of diversity. Therefore, we have decided to leave it intact, to criticize it and redefine its meaning. So the courtyard is essential to the building's transformation, symbolically and literally. Thank you.
Reimagine. We paid particular focus on the internal courtyard, on how we could reimagine the experience of that space as well as the role that that space could play for the citizens of Kigali. In this case, we thought possibly a space of gathering and performance. The form of a new courtyard was informed by studying the site, the solar patterns, the slope of the site, and what kind of forms would naturally support a performance space of that scale. The new courtyard would then redefine the space. It would provide an ordering mechanism for the programmatic functions. Insert. We insert new building units or pods that would then define the edge conditions of the new courtyard. They could accommodate production space for artists as well as the ancillary functions that would be necessary for productions or for a event space of this scale. They would also subdivide the remaining space of the old courtyard and allow for organic flow and circulation within that space. They could be of various sizes as according to the programmatic requirements.
So the new pods, as previously mentioned, are juxtaposed against the existing building, but there's a corridor in between, creating, which we are terming the corridor of reflection. So as you're passing through that square corridor that surrounds the existing building, the experience is of both the new and the old. And paths from that corridor lead into the central courtyard, which is at the heart. It's the heart of the entire project there, which can be an event space, exhibition, a gathering space. So we'll try to look at the kind of creatives we have, and the pods, the new spaces, the pods could be in the program we looked at. They could be making spaces, creation spaces, as spaces for the creatives. Then the existing building could just be given a facelift, and then given its significance, it could be more reflective, so it could house spaces that are for reading, studying, like a library, a museum, a skill center, and such. Then so the central courtyard is at the heart of this creation. The pods that we have produced frame the courtyard. So, for instance, they give the shape to the courtyard and also can act as a backdrop for like what we're trying to illustrate here. Maybe a group of people could come and watch a movie, or they could perhaps put adverts, have theater opportunities, and then maybe during the day, we can have a more active space going on, a more fluid space where you can have different artists perhaps painting in their spaces, maybe having a show as well in that gathering space, a space of reflection, having like the food court, like you have different activities happening within that space, that making it the heart of the entire project.
The working spaces in the pods tower over the existing wall to visually emphasize the value and importance of the artist's work. At night, these pods light up and can be seen from the neighboring hills, acting as a beacon for the community and making real their aspirations for the future. As people leave the busy street, the park acts as a foyer for the courtyard, providing a place not only to relax, but to spend time away from the intensity of the commercial bustle within the city. And following the Kigali 2050 master plan, the park is projected to increase the value of land around it.
So in the greater scheme of things, it would be very irresponsible of us to just concentrate on the buildings and forget that they sit in a landscape. If you look at Kigali and the way they are developing, there's a number of green spaces that are being put up, but they are not they're not being utilized very much. We're trying to open this to the public so that we can have green spaces that are both useful and also they help they help to increase the value of the space, the culture, and also practically, these spaces help to reduce environmental effects like flooding. In the valley, at that bottom of this block, there is a Nyabugogo bus station which experiences flooding during very rainy seasons. So this space here can also be practical in a way that it creates catchment areas, reducing the water that goes into the valley. The same water that is caught that is gotten in these spaces can be used for irrigation of the space. It can be used for flushing of toilets as grey water, and also if done properly, it can help to add to the beauty of the space. So what we're trying to create is an innovation and cultural park that is for the community, irrespective of age and status. Thank you.
We are a team consisting out of 2 students from Uganda. Can you hear me? Uganda Martyrs University, 2 from University of Rwanda, and 2 from University of Cape Town. Our project is named Izuka, which translates to an essence of rebirth. And we translated this into our project through the metaphor of a tree and the landscape retaking and retaking the buildings. While looking at both buildings, we found similarities in both existing buildings. They are as follows: a layout that speaks of order and control, multiple levels of hierarchy, particularly referring to the slope as well as the colonial histories of both buildings. Both buildings have lack of accessibility, both visually and physically, and both have high levels of security. And these things are not conducive to the artist's methodology. It's very rigid, and we decided to break down the aforementioned structures and invert them for the project to be successful to a range of users. I'll now give over to Andrew, who will tell you about the school.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Stephanie. The school, as we've heard, was built in the 1960s for the education of the children of the Belgians, and later was a place for education for the affluent few who could afford. And from our analysis of the site, we found that there were 3 elements that stood out for us and wanted to work with. One was the nature in which the school was closed off from its context. Probably this was for security. The second thing is the systematic organization of the buildings. Probably this is administrative and also for security purposes. One of the lovely things we saw was the use of site. The buildings conformed to the slope, and that is one of the issues excuse me, that we'd like to keep or enhance in our intervention. When it comes to the interventions, instead of having a closed off site, we're hoping to open up the site for public fare to be able to walk through so that the user of the space and the public can merge. Secondly, we're trying to close off the systematic organized pattern. We want to break it up by having some fluid walk through the site. Thank you, and I'll pass on.
Okay, so I'll be telling you a little bit about the program of our proposal. First, we decided to remove what was unnecessary to us, and you can look at the diagrams below. The yellow roofs we decided to remove, and then we decided to insert a transparent street edge. This becomes a flexible retail podium on street level, and it's topped with commercial and residential spaces that aim to increase the economic viability of the site. We have a curving walkway that weaves the pedestrian with the user of, or the artist in this case, of the space, and they would occupy the ground level on the courtyards, where the courtyards then form production spaces as well as the interior of the existing structures, which would act as administration as well as production and gallery spaces. The walkway that cuts diagonally across the site allows for a journey with resting spaces on top of the buildings. And it cuts vertically, the resting spaces then happen vertically and horizontally across the site. And this walkway then weaves the pedestrian in with the artist.
So the quality of spaces we are proposing is, as you can see there, on the, thank you very much. So on your right corner lower, we have the interior spaces where the artists, the individual private parking spaces, where the artists can bring to life their creations in a secluded space. Now, that the interior spaces open up to a courtyard, which is in the center with the lady in blue, into the courtyard, which is an area that enables collaboration between the individual artists. So you have the visual artist meeting the filmmaker, you have in the public, possibly, meeting the artist, you have the children meeting the people they look up to, and they can learn from them, and possibly the artist learns from the public as well. Now, from the courtyard, we have a walkway on the right of the lady in blue. We have a walkway that rises to the mezzanine level, where the pedestrian can observe, look into the courtyard, and see how the work of the artists comes to life. So in that way, while the pedestrian is crossing the site, they get to know what the cultural center is about, without maybe, if they don't want to, without going into the site physically. Yeah. So on the street level, we have an intervention where you have, on the street level, we have interventions of varied transparency into the site. On your right, we have an amphitheater space where we have performances and all, and people passing by, while looking across the porous partition into the workspaces of the artist. And on your right corner, we have the existing structure of the school without the partitions. We remove the partitions from the existing structure so that we have the artist able to create the kind of space they want to work in based on their needs. Yeah, well, it also enables the person on the street level to look into the site and see what is going on and get enticed to get into the cultural center.
And the prison being built in the 1930, it provided the feeling of colonial oppression, and it being it being at a bit of the valley, pulled from the city, it also provides the feeling of depression. So our scheme is to shift this power of colonialism and then break the corner and then shift the interests. So instead of coming down to the valley, you are now shifting the interest, and then you are going to move uphill. We also want to give it back to people, give it back to the city. So we also have this central courtyard, which will also be as a pause for the city, and then it also hosts the diverse population of Rwanda, and then worldwide visitors and the artists. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Actually, we have summarized the design process into two big ideas. So the first one is the breaking up the corners, and the second one is the planting the facade. For the breaking up the corners, our aim was to disempower the colonial fortress, so that we could, if we want to change this prison into a place with a social interaction, with a diverse population within the building, we saw that it could be a good idea of giving this building to the new entrances. For the second, planting of the facades could bring back this nature within the space in the series of creepers, and we saw that it is a good way of relating the building with the surrounding landscape. Thank you.
The final conclusion. If I could just ask everybody to please bow their heads for a small second and hum. Okay, like this. Hum. Guys, group participation. Hum. Okay, you get the point. That's what we imagine the space to feel like. So, after planting the facade and there we go, we have a pointer. After planting the facade and bringing the nature back into the building, breaking the corner, we allow access into the building. So how we went about doing this was, we have the corner, we disassembled and deconstructed the power. We then applied these bricks that were used in the corner onto the floor. So it's this idea of walking over this colonial power. So in traditional Rwandese culture, there's the symbolism of planting a seed over the lives of someone lost. And that is exactly what we aim to do over this brick. So now we have this tree of memory that then grows across. So instead of filling our courtyard with immense function, we decided to create this homage to the lives lost within the space, and the lives lost greater than the space. So hence this. So we have our gallery and our museum space within the existing structure after we've inserted this mezzanine. And then we have this really powerful space with a clearing in the center for a really intimate performance with no direct path, because we found that it was really apt for you to kind of meander through the trees and really feel the space. Concluding on the project, I know it's a little bit small, but we have this idea of densification moving toward the building to kind of blur the boundary of the existing conditions. Hence this, working with the topography, we aim to insert these kind of work-live spaces, because we try to understand the current manner in which artists work, practice, and live, and why break up these spaces when we can integrate all of them. So we have this economically viable space in the center, as you can see the prison right about there. Moving toward the prison, so the line becomes smoother and less iconic. We then have our clearing in the center for performance with our trees that overgrow. So from the exterior of the building, you don't get to experience the trees, but you have this hint and this idea that it exists. So it entices you and then pulls you into the architecture. Moving forward, as to what my team has said, is the slope. So instead of going down, which was current, into the building, because the fort was put into a space of death and where people were left to die. So we wanted to subvert this power by then increasing the journey to go up the hill, so regaining that power and shifting directions. Then also using the landscape on the site, we've then inserted an amphitheater that then looks toward the building as it's green. So this process then happens over time because change is not instant. Thank you.
Seriously, guys? Thank you.
Are you taking over?
Oh, no.
Okay,
I will let you.
Just thanks to all the presentations. So now we're going to ask Faisal Georges, a professor at the Ethiopian Institute of Architecture, Building and Construction from Addis Ababa, to act as a first respondent to the 4 proposals and offer some comments. And then we're going to try and moderate a Q&A between the students and the audience. So thank you, Faisal.
Thank you for inviting me here and also be part of this very interesting series of discussions and the forum, especially Kathleen and all the organizers, Bozar, and so on. So this is, adaptive reuse is also one of my passions in this profession. And it's a great idea to involve students from 3 different universities to come and work together, because the students are our future. And students can come up with crazy, very creative ideas. So congratulations for the organizers. You've seen what kind of works that have been displayed. For me, conservation or preservation is basically managing change. And change is going on. We are dealing with change, as you have seen in these projects. Just to come to some of the points that I jotted down from this presentation, for the 4 presentations, I liked, for instance, at the beginning, the school, the first project we showed the school was very interesting, but I feel that the connection with the city, its urban entirety, especially at the boundary, was not properly dealt with. So when you continue working on it, you should probably look at how the boundary works. At the same time, you broke the wall. I don't think it is really necessary to destroy the wall, because the wall of that compound is one of its features, but it would have been better to make it more porous and use the wall. The wall has also a benefit between porosity and enclosure. So it would be good if you could maintain the wall, part of it, but then open it and so on. And I felt that that was too drastic, but of course students have the courage to do that. And then you should also show a little bit the activities. I know this will come in the future, but what kind of functional arrangement activities are you planning in these spaces? Adding the spaces, adding more volumes was good, but what is the interaction? The urban acupuncture is also a very interesting concept, and you try to connect the 2 sites. The urban strategies, the analysis of the urban strategies were very, very interesting. I think I liked also to really how you took certain buildings and with very little changed them into something else. It needs creativity. It's a very clever idea. It needs more work. So this has a very strong, potential of even being realized. And activating all this activity, the streets, connecting these 2 would be great. So congratulations for that proposal. And then going to the 3rd one, the reimagining of the courtyard. The reimagining of the courtyard was great. You talked about social and economic values to preserve and keep it intact is also very interesting. But, the confinement was a little bit, for me at least, was a little bit disturbing because it's a very confined, very hard-edged prison. And it would have been, keeping the wall, I have no problem, but it would have been better also to make it in some places transparent, porous, open, open toward the city, maybe using glass and so on. This relationship with a very contemporary material and the brick wall could have made a very interesting dialogue. So this transparency, possible transparency between the inside and the outside, people could look inside what's going on. But what you did inside is very, very clever, very interesting. And creating the park was also a great idea around this huge fortress-like structure. But really, people would like to see outside, to see the park, how beautiful the park is, and so on. So keep the line, but make it porous. The fourth one, the Izuka, is I think I like this project very much. It's a very it had a lot of interesting points, dealing with nature, the site and the public, increasing economic viability, and so on. These are very interesting and very viable ideas. With visually connecting public spaces, that's pedestrians, passage without direct physical contact, is also a very interesting concept. This passage that goes through the school, the passage that passes the school, and then keeping visual connection, but at the same time not making them physically connected, reminds me of Jim Sterling's project in Stuttgart. The museum in Stuttgart is a very typical example of passage, urban passage, but not physically directly connecting these two. And this is an idea that could be explored more, and so on. And then finally, I'm almost there. So finally, this shifting the corner, breaking I think in the last presentation, shifting the entrance and breaking the corner is an excellent idea. But the public, from a practical point of view, the public never goes to the back of the whole site and comes back from there. So connecting it to the city is good, and also the same from the park side. So the effort to humanize the facade, to make the facade more humane, more ecological, and so on, is great. Reusing the broken material as floor pavement also is an exciting idea, and there is a lot of great symbolism in this project. So, of course, as time goes by, these ideas will be clear. In general, what I saw or what I observed is that these projects done by these young students are giving them, I think it will give them an insight into reusing existing buildings. I think we heard Christian yesterday that he was not very happy of reusing buildings, that most practicing architects really do not like reusing buildings, because we are so keen of creating our own monuments, our own designs, that we are not keen about these things. In Europe, if you were practicing in Europe, it's a must. Whether you are in Holland or in Italy, I think almost 3/4 of architects work on adaptive reuse projects. But in Africa, it is coming, and we have very limited resources. We cannot afford to break down buildings and rebuild huge structures, which is happening very much in my country. Do you know what happened to the central prison in Addis Ababa? They demolished it and built the African Union. The Chinese built the African Union 33-floor building in the center of the city. So, there are these cases. So I really, congratulate the Rwandese for finding. It's a hard. Of course, you have had very hard history, recent history, but growing out of it, passing from a very very tragic history, transforming this into something more optimistic, something more great, with clever artistic and architectural ideas is great. And combining artists and architects to work together would be a great, you would be the pioneers, I tell you. It's a great thing. So I congratulate the initiator of this idea. And as a country, we say Rwanda is young, but you always learn from the young. So congratulations for these great ideas, and we are with you.
Thank you. Again, congratulations again to the students. Some of you should do theater. You have nice voices. You know who you are.
Well, thanks, Fasil, for this initial response. And I mean, I think, obviously, I also want to add my own personal congratulations to the students. I mean, together with Leslie and Joe, we were looking at the work 2 days ago. And I think there's been a massive development and progress on the schemes that needs to be celebrated together with the work of their tutors. So I think really, again, a round of applause for this work. And before opening up to a Q&A session, I just wanted to sort of also pick up on a couple of topics. I mean, obviously the schemes are there as pretext to start a conversation, right? So we're not looking at them exactly for the way they look or the aesthetic significance, but more like what is the conceptual approach. And I mean, I'm reminded a lot of times also through my own work and the work the students I facilitated in Rwanda, Pierre Nora introduced this concept of lieu de mémoire in the 1960s, wrote extensively about it. And what is the role of memory, and what is the role of a place of memory, and how does that get a physical translation? And one of my obsessions, as some know, is topography. And the notion of topography in its literal meaning of writing of a place. And so how does the physical act of transforming the environment contribute to write the history of a place? And so how are the stones of the past, if you will, embedded and visible and made visible and surfaced? I mean, one of my now I'm speaking a lot about myself, but obviously in terms of my favorite projects is Dimitris Pikionis' ascent to the Acropolis in Athens, built in the 1970s, where he takes old stones and disposes them along this pathway that leads up to the Philopathwa and the Acropolis. And this is almost an invisible project because it appears as it always has been there, but it is a complete reimagination of the past. And so I think particularly in countries which have a troubled history, or every country really has some form of troubled history, it's not that, but how to deal with one's own ghosts and one's own transformations and one's own desires, and how is the power of memory, a physicality, then a tool to transcend and to cross cultural divides, linguistic divides, if so. So what is that language? And I think that what is interesting about the work that was presented here today is the representational form that it took on. And not because it's an aesthetic manifestation, but because it's integral to a propositional approach. And so I think this cross-cultural, multi-linguistic, multi-international, cross-continental approach is important to be recognized for its courage and boldness and willingness to tackle that challenge with ideas that then can be easily criticized, but that's not really what we're here for. And I think so that I would like now to spend the next 20 minutes or so, right, something like that, in trying to facilitate a conversation around that. And so I have no precise structure to it, but yeah, so, and I was thinking, I don't know, but I'm looking to the MC, would it be possible to ask the students to just sort of occupy that space of the scene, because I think it doesn't make sense for them to be there.
Come here and see how it
and
feels.
then just really sit there, right? And then you should take the questions more than anybody else.
Yeah,
because you did the work. There's another one here. Yeah, pass the mic around.
It's for a panel, not a selfie. Just sit. Come this way, come this way. Where is it? Okay, so I have two microphones here. And yes, I'm sorry. And there's this, no. School was a long time ago. So by the time they're doing this, if you have questions and if you do remember which project it's directed to, please feel free, raise your hand, and I'll bring a microphone to you.
Okay, I don't remember exactly the names of the groups, but I written just group 1, 2, 3. Okay, I think that you know your groups, how you follow the group presentation. So one of the group 2, I want to ask them in the project at 9030, how many people do you think will be, the place can accommodate? Because you stated that there can be a concert, there can be something that can be just be done inside. So how many people do you think can get in and then do some like an activity that can take place inside?
Space capacity?
Yes.
Like as in the maximum?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's one. Second, I want to know for the third group, about the entrance and exit, because it used to be one. So do you think that you are going to demolish one part and create the second exit, or because on the design I saw that just one exit that is used to be, because it's it's closed.
The prison?
Yes, the prison.
Okay.
Yeah, that compound, it's like closed, and it's just one exit, and I don't think one exit is for those activities taking place inside can be enough. Thank you.
Okay. So which ones of you are the prisoners? Who wants to speak for the? Okay. Speak quickly. You're standing between us and lunch. Yeah.
All right. So responding to the first question, we are group 2, and just to try and clarify your question, it was pointed towards the prison side. The courtyard space. All right. So in our presentation, we one of the places that we sort of looked at was the cells, the existing cells. Not sure if you remember. So we had the existing cells, and we didn't quite look at the courtyard per se. However, in how many people can be accommodated within the cells themselves. So the idea with the cells was that we take advantage of the existing structure of how they're divided, and you can have multiple artists display their works. So each artist can occupy a cell per se across that wing, and the courtyard space. What are we doing with the courtyard space?
More of a third group question. No. Sorry, I personally think it might be better for the third group or the fourth group to answer this question, as they analyze the prison a lot more, where we discussed more of the urban scheme.
Okay. Yes.
No, yeah, now it's on. With regards to our scheme, we have two main performance spaces. The one amphitheater on the outside that utilizes the slope that could accommodate close to 150 people. That was one of our largest spaces. And then on the inside of the courtyard, we looked at having a much more intimate theater in the round kind of setting, with subsidiary spaces that would then form underneath the amphitheater to then house the artists during preparation. So in that, we're looking at about 80 people, so it's a lot more intimate.
Yes, prisons can be intimate. Yeah. Professor Logo has a question.
Yeah. So this is going to be a very different kind of question. In Highgate Cemetery in London, there's Karl Marx's grave, and I'm hoping you all know who Karl Marx is. Yeah. And even if you don't, you say yes. And on the grave itself is a very interesting inscription. And it writes, philosophers have tried or have analyzed the world in many ways. The point, however, is to change it. Can I just see by a show of hands how many of you feel that the point of architecture is to change the world?
Really?
That's depressing.
I don't know what just happened, but yeah.
Do you understand the question? You did. Okay.
Yep, somebody, yes?
Yeah. Students, thank you so much for the good work done. With respect to the current programs that in Rwanda we have employment program, employability program. So if we choose to transform one of the buildings that you have identified, did you imagine the estimate of the youth that can be employed in that building just by how many? Because we are trying to empower the youth into the sector. So did you imagine about the number, by how many at least would that cultural infrastructure can accommodate as a strategy to reduce the unemployment in Rwanda? I did not specify a group, just...
Thank you for that question, because in general, rather than just looking at the spaces we are creating and the buildings, we are also looking at the fact that the arts are suffering and the sciences are getting so much funding almost everywhere in the world. So, in general, you guys, well, I mean Kigali, Rwanda, you're creating... I know, I've looked at most of the master plans as well and what you create apart from this, but programs, let's say like Kigali Innovation City, which is basically science. You know, you get all this funding and it goes to the sciences, but then how many people are unemployed when they're artists? If you can create spaces like this for them, you can create innovation hubs for them where they can actually gain from each other. Thereby you're basically helping them to be self-employed, understand that they have the potential to actually move things, shift things, and because they're creating ideas like this, they can also get, there's so many people who have money and they do not know what to invest it in. As long as you can give this, as long as you can give the youth a platform to actually talk about their ideas, because most of them never get anywhere because they don't have the platforms. They don't have the spaces to work. They cannot afford rent in these high-end offices which are owned by really rich people who already have the money anyway. So if we can help to create these spaces, then you give them a platform, you give them a voice. Then they're able to put out their ideas. If they're able to put out their ideas, then you're able to connect them to everyone else as well.
Yeah, she wants to, yeah.
I think I wouldn't look at it in terms of the numbers of people, but I would look at it as being a hub. A hub is more of a place where people, let's say, of the same profession come together and share ideas. I can give an example of this situation where the students from University of Rwanda, University of Cape Town, and Uganda Matters University. The idea of having different schools of architecture coming together helps in igniting ideas more. So that's the same idea in terms of the creatives. When creatives come together, I feel when a sculptor is next to a painter and they're next to a filmmaker, they have a similar way of working. They are telling stories, and these stories have beginnings, they have high ends, and they have low ends, and they have the end. But then the end can actually be a starting story for another creative. So the idea of igniting ideas among artists in terms of creating a hub is quite important.
Well, for us, it was not more about how many people it can host, for starters. It was about a place that the youth can go to first before we think about the numbers, because it does not make sense investing in such a place that hosts 1,000 of them and then none of them come to it. So that was the first thing. What is it that will draw the youth to a place that they can use every day? So no, it wasn't just a matter of let's build a place that can accommodate very many people, but let's build a place that people will use every day. So, yeah.
Stuff, good stuff. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm sorry, let me express myself in French.
Yes,
I'm more comfortable. I hope that the MC will translate. J'aimerais d'abord dire merci vraiment à toute l'équipe pour deux choses, pour l'imagination, pour la collaboration qu'ils nous ont montrée à travers le continent. Et moi, je suis directeur d'un centre qui s'occupe d'enfants de la rue, Street Children Program.
He runs a street children program, and thank you for your presentation.
J'ai deux questions. D'abord, ce que j'ai vu qui a été fait avec l'école belge m'a inspiré un peu. Je me suis dit, si une organisation comme la nôtre veut proposer son espace pour qu'il puisse y avoir justement comment je dirais, cet espace culturel où les artistes peuvent vraiment intervenir, parce que cela peut permettre en même temps aux enfants qui peuvent déjà intégrer dès leur bas âge, comme l'a dit notre sœur hier, comment procéder. Je ne sais pas, peut-être que c'est aux organisateurs de répondre.
Okay. So it's maybe a question for all of us, actually. So his question is, in his structure, the street children program that he's running, how, if he wants to offer the space that he already has, because he already has a structure for these children, how does he proceed to integrate a cultural program or cultural projects into his own structure? Because first of all, you will get a space as artists. Second of all, the street children have activities, cultural activities, which can lead to them definitely leaving the streets. How does he? Because he's going to have to talk to the organizers about that. But that's a very good idea.
Even other children also. Let me.
Second question.
Second question. Yeah. Ma deuxième question, c'était, nous avons des villes qui naissent actuellement. Je fais référence par exemple à la ville de Nyamata, où tous les habitants, la plupart des habitants de Kigali maintenant sont en train de bouger pour aller habiter là-bas. Où c'est encore un terrain vierge, je dirais. Où déjà, à partir de ce qui est en train de se faire, on peut prendre les devants et proposer des espaces. Comment faire pour influencer justement les décideurs pour y arriver? Merci.
Merci. Second question was, there are literally cities that are being born as we speak in Rwanda. Like he mentioned Yamata, it's down south on the way to Butare, where people, like, it's growing so big that people who live in Kigali right now are moving to Nyamata. They still work in Kigali, but they go home in Nyamata because the city is expanding. While the city is expanding, how do we approach the decision makers so we can have access to that land and start from scratch about non-existent spaces? Because now we're talking about reusing spaces. He's talking about land that we can take over and propose these kind of structures. Who wants to? Yes, Dorcy.
Bon, j'aimerais déjà répondre à la question de Joseph, qui a un centre. Et en fait, dans l'esprit ici, les étudiants ont travaillé sur 2 cas d'études, sur 2 bâtiments, dans leur environnement, en fait, que ce soit l'école belge, que ce soit la prison. Mais je crois qu'après, ce sera peut-être aux architectes de répondre à cela, pour dégager aussi des modèles adaptable à d'autres lieux. Et donc, si c'est pour un usage culturel, donc c'est aussi par rapport à... Nous, on a d'abord lancé un questionnaire pour que les étudiants puissent travailler avec les avis des artistes et des professionnels du secteur. Comme ça, pour qu'ils proposent des solutions liées à l'usage. Et ici, je pense qu'une étude comme celle-là peut servir justement à ce qu'un centre comme celui que tu diriges puisse fonctionner, avoir un modèle. Mais pourquoi pas, puisqu'il y a aussi des étudiants de l'Université du Rwanda qui ont participé à ces travaux. Je sais que les étudiants de l'Afrique du Sud vont continuer à travailler. Et pourquoi pas un centre comme le vôtre ne ferait pas une collaboration avec l'école d'architecture pour imaginer comment réaménager ce centre dans un usage culturel et social, justement, pour les enfants.
Yeah, that'd be okay. So, it's Darcy is basically saying the question is pretty relevant. The one with the street kids and associating it with a cultural program is pretty relevant. But that was not the point of this exercise. The point of this exercise is just trying to imagine models that can be implemented not only here but everywhere else that faces the issues that we're facing today. The proposition would be, instead of having his structure added on with our programs, he, as somebody who's running a street children program, needs to talk to architects the same way we did, so that you guys can design something that is suitable for what he's actually doing, and maybe even eventually later we introduce our expertise as just one slot of what we do for the street children, but the street children being the center of the attention. The same way you're building something for the artist, we need to be able to create that space for the kids too. So that was the point of Dorcy, and there was...
I wanted to add something on, I think for the street children center, we need a multidisciplinary collaboration like this, having people making discussions, and then we can come up with things. And children, they are the most inspiring people I could see. I'm really sure if someone could visit your center, you could find some schemes they have already established from themselves. I don't know how they work, but children really have this. They like to explore, and from watching them, you can also construct a scheme that could work in line with the cultural space. I could say that a collaboration workshop, we, the students from the University of Rwanda, we are really happy to volunteer in such actions. We can
Nice.
have something like that.
Je traduis ou bien c'est... It's okay.
Okay. I wanted to ask a second question. His second question.
Okay.
Okay. I have a mic. I was saying, what you have said, it's true. We are having so many cities that are now being created elsewhere. We have Mnyamata. We have also this concept of the secondary cities that we have in Rwanda. So in these secondary cities, they have master plans, and in those master plans, there are places that were dedicated for heritage site and culture spaces on the master plan. But now we see that the development of those sites is it's not being developed as it should be done. So I think that what you can, as you have asked, what can be done, I think that you just prepare your project, go to the district as normal, and present the project to the district. They can show you exactly where it was in the city center, where they have planned for those cultural activity. You can visit the place and then start seeing if you can implement those projects. For example, I can say in Rubavu, in the former Gisenyi, there are places that are all still occupied by the government land that we have dedicated for heritage and cultural spaces. That now there is a study that ongoing that is developing those places. They are now drawing this kind of design that our student here presented. They are now proposing, now at Rwanda Housing, we are at the stage of validating them, those design that are proposed of things that can be done on those places. There are some art gallery that are being proposed. There are some open bars. There are some different things that are being proposed. So I think that if you have an idea, a great idea of things that can be done, please, you're welcome to propose it, and we can accompany you. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have two more questions here. Yes, please.
I would like first to congratulate all the students, because really you did a wonderful and amazing work. My question is rather simple. It's for all the groups. It's about the fact that I would like to know if you took into consideration during your work at any point the vulnerability or the risk of not making this project happen, meaning that you could have, for example, the case of Addis, when you tear down the building and you put something else on that. Did you somehow gave you a kind of resilience about your project, or are you ready maybe to cope with that and to convince people with a possible trade-off about the use or about the project?
So basically, how dramatic are you going to be if we don't build this?
I think a lot of our groups looked at various phases of development of our interventions, and the first one being very minor, and then if that's successful, another stage gets added on. Is this on? Yes. But the trade-off for my group in particular was we knew that the area around our site was very, very commercial orientated, and it would most probably be bulldozed and redeveloped into a hotel, like the hotels around it. So for us, we wanted to create a space that did have accommodation and still serve the artists, so that that revenue built from apartment blocks and office spaces would keep the rest of the site alive.
Personally, why I even really presented about the landscape is because the green spaces are always going to be necessary for all intents and purposes. You can't have a site that has less than 20% of the site is a building, the rest of it is still open, and then you really choose to come and add more and more building. So it is, I think if people talked about this, if they said they needed more green spaces, if we came up with new schemes and developed these projects up to the end, which we intend to do either way, we could still request to have another meeting like this, where we can present the developed design, so that we can convince people that some of these things work. Because the more built areas you're having in the city, the more you're creating problems in terms of increasing the heat, in terms of water runoff. These are real things. You may see the upper side of town where everything is green and clear. There's always a lower side of town as well. This water has to go somewhere. So if we are solving real problems as well, rather than just creating schemes and beautiful designs which remain on paper, we can actually push for some of these things to be implemented, because they're useful, they're helpful, and Kigali still has that chance, which not many cities have right now.
That's good. Thank you. Yes, please. Then we have the young lady here, and then we have a question from Faisal, and then we can have lunch.
Thank you.
Oh, did I?
I don't have a question. It's a kind of solution. You have tried, you are learning and I'm learning English now. I want to try my English so that I was amazed. Congratulations on what you are doing. I'm going to suggest my solution using English. You yes, you have said you have skills, and you need people who have money to join your skills and their money to make amazing things, to put to life your skills. That's what you want to say? I want to use my example to ask something to Rwanda Art Initiative. I used to write stories every day. I don't know when I started, but it's only in 2014 I got a chance to give one of my texts to a publisher so that it can start published. From there, I have published 25 storybooks, children's storybooks. Why? Why did it happen? Because there was a platform where there was writers, illustrators, and publishers, and those people who have money who want to invest in books, for example. And I used to go there, and I tell my story project, and those who are interested in my stories put their money in my stories. Now, that's why I have been publishing all those books. That's why people know me like a children's story writer. Now, I have to suggest something like Rwanda Art Initiative. I'm really happy so that you have gathered all of us. We have skills. We have, you have people or organizations who have money to fund our skills. Can you please organize like that platform whereby those skilled people can show their project so that all those people who have money to invest in those different projects can know each other. It does not need a big space, an expensive space. Rwanda Art Initiative had a garden. You can just make it a plan and call upon those skilled people, those who have ideas, and they will come and tell you our project.
Okay.
Thank you.
An architecture, a talent market. That's cool. Yes, please.
Yes. Let me say something. Let me, sorry to hug
Paul,
you.
I swear to God, I'm hungry.
Come on. Hervé, Rwanda Arts Initiative is a hub. For sure, I would love to take these students and visit Rwanda Arts Initiative.
You've never
it's
been?
A hub. It's a hub.
Yeah, you should.
So that means I'm trying to give a confidence of what our sister was saying. Gathering people, there is a logic behind this that the previous meeting we had with the minister, she accepted that after this forum, this mapping, it will be a reference to the next 6 cities on Kigali. Okay? So that means this forum has a strong message to pass as regard to develop culture, art, creative industry in Rwanda. For that reason, as the managing director said, we really open our hub. Whoever wants to come in is really welcome, and some of the members have already visited, and we were still welcoming everyone. Please don't go before you visit Rwanda Arts Initiative.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can we have we have Faisal, and then we go, and then I have a strange announcement to make.
Yes, I think this experience of working, even though it's a very compact, very tough work that we have to do in the last 4 or 5 days, did it really fundamentally shake or make you ask your stand on architecture? Did it have an impact, this experience? That's the first question. Second one is, yesterday you have seen all the different artists and creators and so on in Kigali and also all over Africa and Belgium. Did that, what you heard yesterday, did it sink in? Did you get something out of this discussion? These are the questions.
Juste pour répondre rappelle-moi ton prénom, à Martine, juste pour dire que cette plateforme existe déjà et que il est toujours possible de venir et de faire avec son projet, et que ce hub existe et cette plateforme qu'on essaie de mettre les gens ensemble. Donc on peut venir exposer son projet et nous chargeons de le relayer à toute personne intéressée et qui peut y trouver un intérêt. Voilà. Mais venez, et puis on parle.
Hi. Just to answer your question, at least from my perspective, and maybe that resonates with everyone, I think we're very different, all of us, but we're also very similar. And the difference was very clear, you know, the first couple of days, and then you realize that we're all just young architecture students, and we all think that we know the best. And then you quickly realize that maybe someone else has a better idea, or a different idea, and what does that mean? And I think the most valuable thing I learned is just kind of to see it from other people's perspective. And the gallery was awesome, very, very inclusive. And I think where in Cape Town, I find the art scene quite exclusive. And it was, yeah, really great. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. There's a...
Oh, I know we're hungry, but just to add on to that, I think for me and speaking for my group as well, perhaps speaking for everybody, being taken away out of context, out of Cape Town, out of our luxury of 4G Wi-Fi and 3D printers.
Oh,
and
well,
laser
thank
cut-
you.
laser cuts. It was a struggle, but I think it taught me and I think our group something that we become so reliant on all of these tools and devices that we used to represent that we actually use it as a crutch to produce work, and stripping it back to almost analog times where hand becomes key, which is very foreign because my stickmen are still stickmen, was the strangest thing. And I think we learned so much and we grew so much, and it was amazing to us to see how resourceful we all could be to use the very little mediums that we had available at our tips and make the most of it. Yeah.
That'll be that. MTN is going to love that answer. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think just adding to the points made by our colleagues or my fellow students, I think this initiative really was made us realize so much potential, and essentially some who doubted themselves were stronger, and some who are very competitive learned to deal or work to actually work with others. I remember back in varsity, in my undergrad studies, I was working with 3 of my very close friends, and we had very similar tastes, or rather can say similar strengths. So it was quite hard in the process, but the final outcome was quite well. And one of the things that we learned, which is quite similar to what I learned here, was that, well, my friend summarized it in 3 words, well, in a phrase. He said, compromise, synthesis, and humility are the secrets of fruitfully working with others. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. If you want, yeah, please.
I'd like to answer first question, probably both, from the perspective of the students from Uganda.
Yeah. Are you sure your microphone is on? Oh, you're just hungry. Yeah,
Okay.
it's on, it's on.
Okay, sure. So we had a class meeting Tuesday of last week, and we very nearly voted to not come for lots of reasons, but I believe we probably all are glad we came. And one of the reasons I believe so is for architecture schools in Uganda, I can't say this the same. It's probably the same for schools in East Africa, maybe. But for Uganda, there's a distinct shortage of professionals in the field and people who have gone out there and done research and practiced. And the wealth of information that they have, we don't have much of it in Uganda. And add to that the fact that we don't have lots of good examples of good architecture. So you find a lot of our precedent studies are from places outside of the country, projects done outside the country. So over the last week or so, on a personal level, I feel enriched by all the presentations we've seen the last couple of days from FBW, ASA, and mass, yes. I've been to such a thing before in Nairobi 2016, but then we didn't have to do stuff with other students. But this experience was pretty new, and I think it changes the way you see things. And at some level, you find that exposure and experience are pretty good teachers, and there's no replacement for them.
Thank you. No, thank you, really, thank you. You guys did an amazing job. And before you guys go, this is by far the strangest thing I'm about to do. Like, there's a lady who lost a ring in the ladies' room. If check your fingers if you're missing something. And I thought to myself, if I do this, they're going to think I'm proposing. I'm proposing this. So if you're missing a ring, you will find it here. So. Yeah. Okay, so enjoy your lunch. We're going to come back, I hope, for the business perspective after lunch. And please be here at, I don't know, what time? Kathleen? Kathleen? Bravo, il est 14h moins 20, à 15h. Okay, at 3 p.m. we should be back here. For the entertainment at night, the tickets for the Nyege Nyege are already being sold outside. You can find someone with the tickets. And after lunch, sometimes after lunch, please make yourself available down there so we can have a group picture with all the students and the teachers and the instructors, yeah? Okay. Enjoy your lunch and please be back. Yeah. The one I'm proposing to is here.